I'll never forget the day the bully chased me home from school, all the way home. Not to my block, not to my street, not to my driveway, to my front door. And that was his biggest mistake. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Master the Story Power Method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit StoryPowerCoach.com.
Real quick reminder, Narrative Warrior Kingdom cohort. We're in our first go around right now. 18 weeks from now, we will have our first graduates. Narrative warriors ready to combat the lies that are going on in our culture and our society and have a story that answers the challenge. Are you in?
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. When that bully chased me home from school that day, he learned a lesson that it's hard learned, but it's valuable to witness, not just in the lesson itself, but in the way that it came about. See, what he learned is that good families run deep. It was unfortunate for him that the week that he decided to pull this stunt of chasing me all the way to my front door, my mom was at work, but my granny was home. My granny was that kind of people. My granny grew up in the grit of the late 1930s and early 40s. She grew up in the grit of living in a family of 15 with not enough food, not enough to go by, not enough to live on. But she found this way to survive, and she was a straight up mean streak survivor. Her ability to get through the tough times gave her this coarse fighter spirit. Oh, she was a Sunday school teacher, and she always had her wig just so, and she always had the right words to say, and she was pretty well educated considering when and where she grew up. But she also had this way about her that said, if you cross the line, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself staring down the barrel of Mama Bear mode, and Granny don't play that. And at some point, Mama Bear mode and Granny don't play that collide with your own worldview and your own well-being. And that's what Bruce Crawford found that day. He was threatening to beat me up for no other reason than he didn't like my shoes. And he met Granny, who said, not on my watch. It's a pretty powerful thing. But see, something else that I learned from Granny over a period of time was there's a right way to talk to people and a wrong way to talk to people. And there's a proper relationship that you should have with the ones around you, with your elders and with your siblings and with your neighbors and with your creator. And when you get those out of whack, you get a whack. I can remember her telling me, go out there to that fig tree and bring me back a switch because you need one. Well, first couple of times I thought I'd be funny, and I brought her something so big you could barely swing it. She did. The next time I thought, well, I'll be more judicious. I'll bring back something smaller and, barely enough. But she used it, and eventually she got my attention. But I can tell you, when Granny Bear mode and a sense of justice come together, the way you view the world changes. It did for me. It did for my bully. In fact, I don't think I ever saw that kid again. I don't think I ever even saw him at school. He just kind of vanished into the woodwork after he was put in his place. Now, you would have a hard time with that today, because I don't know if you've noticed, but our culture has shifted. Our core values are eroded, if not gone. Our justice system is flipped on its head. Maybe you've heard the story about the little boy who was playing with his sister in the yard, and this crazed maniac who had multiple arrests for sexual abuse of a child. Yeah, I just said it out loud. Drugged the little girl into the woods behind the house to do what he was prone to do. And her brother stepped up with a slingshot and left a nice knot in the middle of his forehead. Justice isn't pursuing the abuser, it's pursuing the teen boy who protected his sister. Not on my watch. Granny Bear mode's about to get activated. There's something wrong with this system. See, here's the biggest challenge, though. I just this morning, a reel popped up in my Facebook, and I'm sure it has to do with the algorithm of the things that I tolerate in my Facebook. But it popped up, and it showed two girls walking down the sidewalk. A guy randomly walks up, punches one of them, pretty much knocks her out cold. The other one jumps on him. He's like, "Leave my friend alone." Now, you can't hear any dialogue, but his friends jump in and try to push him back as well. He fights his friends off and goes after the two women again. One man against two women, he's punching them. Every swing is knocking them completely off their feet, bouncing them off the walls and the windows. One jumps on his back to defend her friend who's on the ground, and he's trying to go after her again. And he just bounces her off the wall and throws her around again. His friends begin to gather around. Here's what's really sad, though. Someone's filming the whole thing and doing nothing. 20 or 30 people walk by as if, "Ooh, that's a bad thing. I shouldn't get involved. He might punch me too." Try that in a small town. I don't think our values are as far corrupted as they are in some of these big towns. And this may have been an international city, a place where, the criminal's always right and there's no such thing as justice unless it's to protect you from telling on the criminal. Yes, there are cases right now in multiple countries where the person who reported the crime against them is being squelched by the justice system. Let me call it what it is, the injustice system. They're being told, you cannot report this to the public. We got this. We got it under control. You cannot act out. You cannot get revenge. You cannot get even. You cannot get your stuff back, your dignity back, or your life back. Can you tell it sticks in my craw just a little bit? I remember the Justice League, truth, justice, and the American way. I think all of those are at risk right now. I really do. Now, here's what I know to be true. When I grew up, and when my parents grew up, and when my grandparents grew up, this concept of what is truth, justice, and the American way, just for a ballpark of things that are important. In that day, we learned that sometimes from a fig tree switch. Sometimes, don't make this mistake, the weeping willow, those things are long and whippy and they will wrap all the way around you. Don't ever fetch a switch from a weeping willow tree. But back in the day, we learned these values, these truths, these absolutes, if you will, from our family, our parents and grandparents. And I realize many of us came from broken homes, and many of us suffered what then was normal discipline, now is considered abuse and will get you thrown in jail. I get that. I understand sometimes those measures of justice need to change. They need to be revisited. But I can also tell you that we're facing a day today where young people have very little discipline. They have no boundaries. They realize they can push the envelope as far as they want to. In fact, most of them aren't pushing the envelope. They're going, what envelope? Think outside the box. What box? And until they end up with a lifetime of incarceration or life-altering injuries, the ones that are paralyzed from the neck down because they got shot breaking into somebody else's house in the middle of the night. The guy who is now suing the homeowner because he decided to break into her house through the mail slot. And she met him before he got in the door because she had no idea what kind of danger she would be in if he got in the house. So she met him in the mail slot with a baseball bat. I say, good on her. I say, stay out of other people's houses if you're not invited. I say, don't be taking people's stuff for whatever reason. I have a friend that I went to high school with who did 5 years for stealing a head of lettuce. Yes, a head of lettuce. When I asked him, what were you doing? What were you thinking? He said, I was just hanging out with a bunch of friends. We were drunk, about 19, 20 years old. They were drunk. They were goofing off. They decided to break into this person's house. He said, I didn't really want to steal anything. I didn't want to go to jail. I said, well, how did you end up with a head of lettuce? He said, I was hungry. I had a head of lettuce and a bottle of dressing. I was going to go home and make a salad. I said, so you broke into somebody else's house to steal a 99-cent head of lettuce and a bottle of dressing? He said, no, I went there because all my friends went there. Bing, 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 bing. He never set out to spend 5 years in jail. He never set out to steal a head of lettuce. He just got caught up with a bunch of people he shouldn't have had any business hanging out with. And you know why? Because he didn't listen to his parents. Because the peer pressure around him didn't include a solid family background where parents would say, don't do stupid